how did you initially get into real estate, and how long have you been doing it?
I'm glad you said that because it's funny. I wanted nothing to do with it. I remember
Wait, hold on.
there's a misconception in real estate that like you get your license and then like you're making money immediately. And no one really knows how much work it actually takes to get to a level where you're really successful. It is an extremely complex process that everyone wants to make simple, and there's no way to make it simple. You know, you don't want a part-time doctor.
Yeah,
You know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
I work on cars and I also fix people.
He's like, my side hustle is I'm a doctor.
Sure enough, like right then my phone rang, and the husband was like, "Yeah, we're not going to close. We're just not going to close on it." And I was like, we don't have a choice. You really have to learn how to read people and figure out like if they're lying to you, why are they lying to you? Why are they not telling you exactly how they feel about whatever the situation is? There's no paycheck that's worth your reputation ever. The reason why we've seen such strong numbers in Georgia comparatively to other states that were big in the pandemic boom is because I'm going to tell you something, and when this happens in 6 or 7 years, I'm going to tell you, I told you that was going to happen. So this will be one of those moments.
On this episode of the podcast, we have Zach Payne. Zach Payne is a successful real estate agent in the North Georgia area. Man, I got to tell you, we got into it. We got into it so many different subjects. This is by far the longest podcast we've done yet. It was so much fun. I think you guys are going to enjoy it a lot. So without further ado, let's welcome Zach to the podcast. Zach Payne, welcome to The Key.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have a chat with you. Before this, we were talking about water.
Yeah.
I want to get into real estate. But I want to continue our conversation about
why
water.
talk about real estate when we can talk about
water? I
want to
talk about water some more. So you were telling me about the silver ionized.
Yeah, so it's silver water. It's a. I feel like I'm like doing an advertisement for them right now.
Is it a brand or is it just like a thing?
No, it was developed by someone who I think they work for NASA. I don't know. My wife knows 1,000 times more about it than I do.
Yeah.
I just drink it.
Yeah.
But it's great for your body and great for like your health overall. We give our dogs silver water, and I mean it's just the best thing in the world. I mean, literally, there's like a 50-page pamphlet that tells you everything that it helps cure. And I mean, I've seen it do wonders for our animals, and like we put it in our water bottles and stuff too.
Yeah.
Like you just do a little bit of it, but yeah, we're big into water too.
That's crazy.
We're water people.
Yeah, I was just for everybody, sorry. This is just such a weird way to start the podcast.
I know, right?
But we're going to get into it.
Would you expect anything less?
I was just telling you about how important it is to get your water. Like, I'm big into like water right now.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, staying away from tap water, even purified water is just like kind of tap water run through a filter. But like keeping it like mountain water, spring water, it's just like, it's like a building block for the rest, like your health.
Yeah, we were talking about that because of well water versus non-well water and all that. And it is really interesting when you go from, most people, like, I don't know, most people, I guess, in the city or like within city limits are not really familiar with wells. And that I thought was an interesting thing. I've run into a lot of people not sure what to even do about having a well. And and the water is just different. It's just
I've
totally,
heard it's so much different.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
All right, well, let's get into real estate now.
All right, okay.
welcome to the water podcast.
Right.
So tell me your story in real estate. How did you initially get into real estate, and how long have you been doing it?
How long do you have? I'm just kidding.
As long as you want.
No, we it's a family business. It's interesting because I've been asked this question a lot because a lot of people know my family and they know of them as like real estate. Almost everyone in our whole family is involved in one way or another. My aunt was a mortgage officer for 40 plus years. My cousins are agents and brokers. They've been, in the business for forever. Wow. My parents, my dad and my mom both were brokers, or still are. My grandparents were in, real estate. It was before licensing, really. So, and great grandparents as well. It was more like land trade and, developing, properties. And a lot of it was farming, because it was big tracts of land, up in the northern part of Georgia. But yeah, I'm like, as I'm getting a little older, I'm starting to dive deeper into that family history lineage kind of thing, just to see, I didn't realize how important that was and how much effect that had on the development of like cities and stuff in the northern part of the state, especially in places that haven't been fully developed yet. It's kind of cool to go back and see those like trade histories from, 200 years ago.
Yep. I can't imagine like having that much that much family history in real estate and then not doing real. It's like almost like you were destined to do.
Let me
real
tell you,
estate.
I'm glad you said that because it's funny. I wanted nothing to do with it. I remember.
Wait, hold on. This episode, just like every episode, is brought to you by Visually Sold. If you're a real estate agent in the greater Atlanta area, you need professional listing photos for your listings. Visually Sold is the best solution. I'm a little biased, but it's true. A few things you need to know. We do photos, video, drone, 3D scans, and we even write your listing descriptions for you. Yes, you heard that right. We deliver everything in 24 hours, so the very next morning you'll have all of the content that you ordered. All of our photographers are employees. They're not contractors. We give them all the same exact camera equipment to use for the photo shoots, so you can expect the same great results no matter which of our team members comes to your listing. You can book your shoot on our website in under 2 minutes. Just go to our website, vs.photos. Just type that into your URL, boopily boop, vs.photos, and you can book a shoot in under 2 minutes. So thank you again to Visually Sold for sponsoring this podcast. Now let's get to the show.
I remember as a kid, we would go on vacations, and like when you have two parents that are brokers, it's like all they did was talk about real estate. And every trip we went on, we were always looking at real estate. So it's like we go to the beach, like they're setting up houses for us to see. Like we're looking at condos and townhomes and stuff. And
you couldn't get away from it.
No, and I would sit in the back of the car, and they would just go on and on and on. And I was like, can we stop talking about real estate? And so I wanted nothing to do with it. And it's funny, you know, as I was coming out of high school was when the market really started to go down, and like 2008, 2009. And I remember my dad telling me, like, whatever you do, don't get in real estate. So I'm like, don't worry, I'm not going to. And so I got my degree in advertising. And it's funny that, you know, things kind of just fleshed out the way that they did because the advertising has been so extremely helpful for me understanding like target markets, why people choose to buy what they buy, and you know, consumer behavior, and you know, even like I said, city development. You know, why are certain people moving to a certain area? COVID really changed a lot of people's you know, needs and wants whenever they were buying. So that helped me kind of understand that side of it. Yeah. And you know, when I got out of school, when I got out of college, I started an ad agency in New York City, and I lived there for a while. And and I worked primarily like in the entertainment business. I did, you know, design and stuff for major brands and, you know, cruise lines and, you know, gosh, there's so many different people, Broadway shows and movies. And
so was this like graphic design stuff? It
was a little bit of everything. So we had it was a small shop, but we did commercial photography, ironically. We did, you know, brand design, like the actual logo design, web design. We would do like little branded videos. We worked with some musicians and, you know, would do like music videos and that kind of thing. I mean, it was pretty much whatever people had that they needed done. And this was in a time too before like Canva was a thing, and you know, like all these like really quick and easy things to make, you know, your design ideas happen. We were kind of those people, and I think it was 2013 or 14 when I moved back down here, and you know, my dad had gotten sick, and my mom was really needing help in her real estate business, and you know, it was just like the perfect time. So I think it was like 45 days. I just sat in an office like this at a computer with a book, and I went through the entire course, like literally sun up to sundown for 45 days, and took my test, got my license, and jumped right in. And and that's kind of how it started. And it's just been an interesting ride ever since then. Like the market's always changing, you know, everything's developing. I thought getting out of advertising would stop that like feeling like I'm constantly behind and trying to keep up with what's going on. And then real estate, you know, threw me a curveball. It's the same thing, you know, you're constantly trying to keep up.
Wow. That's really interesting because, you know, a lot of people say, yeah, I mean, the core of real estate is kind of the same, but the peripherals are all changing so much. And the way people, I mean, we talk about it on this show all the time, is like how big like social media plays a part and how the first showing is online. And it's just kind of changing the whole thing, and you have to keep up with that. Yeah,
I mean, I've got a really good story for you. So this kind of goes back to my roots as a kid. I remember when I was little, at one of my mom's offices in Cleveland, Georgia. This is so funny, and people that have been licensed for a long time will relate to this. This was pre-Zillow, pre-MLS, really. We had a book. The MLS was a book, and it was printed. And the secretary would like get the new listings and from everybody, wherever the my mom helped start the North, I think it's the Northeast Georgia board back in the 80s. And so like they did have a syndicate for all the listings where they could put them out, but it was interesting. They'd come through as like a fax and you would put them in the book. And there was these huge books like land book and houses book and like vacation homes book. And I would sit as a kid and flip through the book every week whenever I get out of school.
Wow.
Just to see like what was, on the market and everything. And to set up a showing, you'd have to schedule, come to the office, pick up the key, go show the house, drive back, take the key back to the office. And if you were showing properties from different listings, from different offices, you would have to go to all of those offices to get the different keys. They had a key drop box. It was just so different. So the core business has definitely stayed the same. It's a people business, but man, like the way things have happened have just increased. That was only like what, 20 something years ago, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So a lot has changed.
A lot has changed. You said this word a second ago, fax. Can you explain what that is?
Oh my gosh. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Back like when telephones were on the wall and not like in your pocket. And it's a whole different world.
I was just telling somebody recently, I was like, I can slightly remember a time before social media existed. Barely.
Oh, yeah.
Barely.
I remember fighting the iPhone. All my friends had them whenever we were in high school, and I was BlackBerry all the way. Like I loved that little rollerball thing, and it took a long time. I think it was 2015 before I got an iPhone.
No way. Mm-hmm. Whoa.
Yeah.
So what was that? The 4G? 5?
That was the 4 or the 5. Yeah.
Wow. I had the first one. I did have the first one.
I like love all my tech friends and stuff. They're like, they had them like long before my dad had one before I did. My dad was, in his 70s and he had an iPhone before I even got one. It's just hilarious.
I remember, the first iPhone, the 2G with the steel back, the metal back.
Yeah.
Such a cool design.
I know, right?
I almost like that more than what we have now.
I know. It's funny how like you just adapt and change to whatever's coming your way.
Yeah.
And then that just becomes the norm, and you kind of forget. The antiquated systems of the past are, it's nice to know them, but it is interesting to see how some of those things have developed and changed for the better, and then some have developed and changed for the worse. It's, I don't know. It's just cool to know.
Yeah, it is. Did you ever have what was that? The Razr? Like the Motorola Razr was one.
This is really funny. The flip one.
Yeah, the flip, and I was gonna say the Sidekick too.
Oh yeah, I did have a Sidekick. Yeah. Man, that Razr phone. I've had so many people. I've actually looked them up on eBay. You can still get them. I've heard so many people say they had better service on those phones than they do on their current one.
I don't know what that is about.
Honestly, if I didn't have to do so much stuff on my phone, I probably would go back and get one.
Yeah.
I just think they're so cool.
Yeah. Well, I also like the idea. Again, I just like the idea. Let me emphasize that. I can't do this and I wouldn't do this, but of just going back to a flip phone completely.
Oh, for sure.
And just I have a laptop, and
wouldn't that be nice? Just to kind of disconnect. I swear, that's my retirement plan, is to disconnect. If I can ever retire one day, knock on wood, I just want to I want to have a flip phone or like the old Nokia brick phone. That.
Those are great. Those are like tanks, dude. Like you can throw those around.
Snake, best game ever created.
Yeah, yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah. I remember playing that on my mom's phone when we went to the doctor's office when I was little.
Oh,
That's what would occupy my time, was Snake.
100%.
Yeah.
Now it's like you have literally the entire world at your fingertips.
Oh yeah, just an endless stream of nothing, of just constant information.
Yeah, I'm curious to get your thoughts on AI and all that as well, because I know that's going to be a big thing coming.
It already is. It's not even coming. It's here. You know, you got to wonder when you're getting an email, when you're getting, I don't know, an advertisement, was it created by a prompt, or was it fully written out by a human? Probably
and having been in advertising, I can tell you that the advertisers are going to do whatever they have to do to be able to get in front of you. And I would say if it makes it easier and more streamlined, we're going to see a lot more of that.
And minimize CPM.
Yeah.
And
I'll be curious to see how that translates to real estate. I know, we have some stuff that we're working on with AI, independently, but we're, I'm seeing the applications as again, potential really good things and potential bad things. It'll just be interesting to see, how that develops in the next couple of years. And, if it ends up being a similar thing to iBuyer, it comes and it kind of goes and then it stays around, but
Yeah.
or if it's really, something that tried and true and sticks.
Man, those iBuyers really tried, didn't they?
They did. I mean, they're still around, kind of, but I don't know. I mean, it goes back to what you said earlier, that the real estate business is tried and true. It hasn't changed. It has evolved.
Yeah.
I think the same way we have as people, but it hasn't changed because it truly is a people business. There's nothing that artificial I don't want to say that. There's no
Careful.
Yeah, right. Like, be careful what I say. This is going to be forever in history. It's not so much that that there's nothing that AI can. Let me say this. I think there will always be a need. I know that for a fact. There will always be a need for people, agents, and that one-on-one connection. And I know there are plenty of people that, I know there's plenty of companies that want to automate the entire process and everything. But truly, I think we oftentimes forget that it is the largest purchase most people ever make. And it doesn't always seem that way because, you're spending big numbers and a lot of times there's a mortgage involved or something.
Right.
But at the end of the day, that's one of the greatest investments you can ever make. We all get a little skewed based on, especially our age and, the people that saw the crash happen, we get skewed because we're worried, prices come up and go down and that kind of thing. But truly, I've seen more people create vast amounts of wealth for themselves and as agents, that's what we work for our clients to help them create wealth, over time. And that's all through real estate. I don't think that, again, like I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I don't see people coming out of that business ever and it being entirely replaced by technology.
Yeah, not entirely.
Could be wrong.
It can't be entirely though. I mean, again,
I know, right?
Who knows? I hope this table's wood, by the way.
I know, right?
I hope it's actually wood. Just kidding. But yeah, I think I see it adding. It'll add to our experience. Yeah. We'll see things like Matterport and things like that. Yeah. Like, real estate will be more immersive with the Apple Vision thing. Probably, you'll be able to tour the house in first person and maybe even like, somebody, if it's out of state, the real estate agent will be able to like carry you around with a 360 camera and you can kind of look around on your VR. Yeah. Right. But
while you're there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think now that Apple's entering that game, because for a while VR was like, all right, cool. Like you can play like Beat Saber.
There's so much you can do with it, and then it kind of reaches a certain point.
And it's like nobody's going to wear this huge heavy thing for a long time. But now that Apple's in it and they're making like with the gestures and everything, making it so seamless where you don't have to have like a crazy powerful computer to do it. You don't have to carry around these clunky, controllers to interface with it. I think it'll be more widely accepted once they actually really fully get into it and make it more, cost effective. Yeah. And accessible to more people. But I see AI and I see technology adding to real estate like that. Yeah. So I think we could almost funny enough, like analyze.
Analyze? I don't know.
Analogy.
Oh,
past, present verb of analogy.
There's probably a participle in there somewhere. I don't know. Or a gerund.
Whatever. We can make an analogy. Okay.
There you go.
For the real estate industry, I think like use a house. Funny enough, right? So the foundation of real estate is what we're talking about. Like people are always going to need some sort of human or expert in the field that knows, how to help them and personally, because it's so personal and it's experience based. And not that AI can't do that someday, but it's always going to require that, I think. But so really, what technology is going to be doing is like remodeling the kitchen in the house, right? Yeah. The foundation's still the same. The bones are kind of there, the same, but we're updating the appliances. We're adding the countertops. Yeah.
I heard something recently that I thought was really cool. Like we were talking about, AI potential in with respect to real estate and everything. And like if you can, take a Pinterest photo or 2 or 5, of houses that you like, and then have depending on whatever the model of AI is that it's using, that you could take those and say, I want to build a house, or I want to buy a house that's like this, that, like these 5 photos I found that are inspiration photos, but I also have like 4 kids, and, the laundry room is the most important thing to me, and I really want a basement and a theater, and I need a 4-car garage, and and that it can either create a floor plan for you that has 3D walkthrough ability, and you can make real-time changes and that kind of stuff for building, or if it can find a house that's like that, or look at a house and say, here's what we can do to remodel that and make it, in 7 days like HGTV does, then make it exactly how you want.
Right. But you're still going to need people to build a house. You're still going to need people to oversee that entire process.
Totally.
You're familiar with that because you're in the process of building a house right
gosh.
now. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
I mean, it's. I'll say this about it. We're remodeling a house. It's actually, ironically, back to my family. We bought my grandma's house, and it's real estate really and truly is about location, right? Like, I always joke that unless we find, bones in the basement or something, or, some issue that totally is unexpected, everything can be fixed. Yeah. So, it was a 1980s house that didn't really know what it was stylistically, and the location was incredible. It's right in town. It's on the top of a mountain, and it's right next to the college, and it has incredible 40-mile views from you can literally see from Dahlonega all the way down to Cumming, and it's amazing. So it was about the location really more than about the house. Just when people say that things will take longer than you expect, it's so true. I mean, and I always think it won't happen to us. We've built many houses and remodeled many houses, and you just never know. The unexpected always presents itself whenever you are least expecting it. But good things have happened, in the process for us, and just in learning experience. Everything's an adventure. So that's kind of how we have to wake up every morning and not try to want to just burn the house down.
Right. Find the wins, look on the bright side.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think, and don't people say when you're doing something like that, plan to spend double the time and spend double the money?
Yeah, I think
something
that's
like
right
that.
too.
Kind of just plan on the worst.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's what happened when COVID happened. I just saw this dramatic transfer of needs and wants, and that's one of the first things I say to people when I start working with them. Let's create a needs and wants list. And there was another, I forget if it was someone I worked with or in advertising, but we start doing these things like a must do list, and then should do list, and a could do list. And because everyone kept saying give me your pros and cons, and it's well, if you end up with the same amount of pros and cons, and what do? You're still on the fence. And
where's the tiebreaker?
Yeah, so we're must do absolutely has to get done. I mean, there's no question about it. It's got to happen. The should do is the once I get through with all the must do stuff, then we should fix this and we should fix that, those kind of things. And then the final is we could add a garage, we could add, a pool, we could add So we've tried to break those sort of things down, and I have no idea where I was going with that, but we were starting with those ideas in our head, and when COVID happened, we were living in a totally different house, and we were really planning to stay there forever. And then all of a sudden, we started seeing this vast movement outside of cities, and people wanted space, and it was more about lifestyle. I feel like I said it a million times. We were making lifestyle moves. Everyone that I worked with was making a lifestyle move. We have a condo or a townhome. Now we want a house with a little bit of acreage. That's what everyone said for 2021 and 2022. And we kind of felt the same way. So we just saw an opportunity. Let's get a little bit further out of traffic. And we've been making those same moves from Alpharetta to Cumming, and now, even further north. And I think that I'm seeing a huge pattern of that happening in my own business, of people continuing to move a little bit further out, and we're running out of space. There's a big chunk of national forest in the middle upper section of North Georgia, and aside from that, there's not a whole lot left to build on.
There's a barrier. You can't really go farther than.
I know.
Yeah.
So it's that is going to be an interesting development over the next 10 to 15 years to see what happens, and how that development grows. I remember when Cumming was all pastures and horse farms, you know.
My wife does as well. She used to tell me like she used to like have to wait for cows crossing the road going to school sometimes. Like not that long ago.
I know.
Which is crazy.
I hear my mom talk about like when 400 was built and it was all like they were grading. It was a dirt road, and you know, people used to go out on the dirt road and like drag race and stuff.
Yeah.
And I forget if that was like the 60s or 70s, but it's just wild. You know, we've really. And I think that's a great thing about Georgia too. And I'm hearing this from all across the country in all different marketplaces, that Georgia as a whole is becoming I guess, posed to be one of the best places to live and best places to relocate to from other parts of the country for, you know, multitude of reasons. But, you know, really we joke about how expensive things have gotten in the last couple of years, but truly, we're an extremely affordable state to live in, comparatively.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you think about it, we have beaches in Georgia. We have beaches, we have mountains, we have the city, we have movie industry here, film industry, music industry here is crazy. I mean, it really is like...
Aside from like the humidity, there's nothing really to complain about.
That was my only con, really. When we're talking about pros and cons list, that was my big con with the humidity. Yeah, I mean, the weather is... It's cool, too, because we get all of the seasons.
Yeah,
here,
we actually get a fall and a spring to some extent. I mean, it kind of sometimes feels like it doesn't last very long, but it's different than being like 90 degrees and in New York, it's like 1 week later it's snowing, you know? It's just, at least we get to enjoy a little bit of the change in the two seasons.
So are you originally from Georgia?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, cool. So did you go to school in New York?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So I went to, I grew up in Cleveland, Georgia. Home of Babyland General.
I love Cleveland.
That's what we're known for.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's like
Cabbage Patch, right?
Yeah, Cabbage Patch Kids.
The mother tree.
Yep. I don't know if it's known for anything else now. And you own a mountain and everything.
Yeah.
It's nice too because in the last few years they've the AVA, the American Viticultural Area, becoming such a big deal up there with the wineries and stuff. I think it's really neat that it's kind of like the Napa of the South. Yeah. But none of that was there when we were kids. So we grew up there, and we moved a little further south. My dad started developing land a little bit further south, and my mom sold her real estate businesses up there. And so we moved like 20 minutes south to Dawsonville, and I went to school in Gainesville, and then right out of school, I was like, bye, I don't ever want to be here again. And which is super ironic because now you couldn't pay me enough money to leave. But I moved to New York, went to school, and, came back, raring to go. And now I have a much greater appreciation. I think kids oftentimes forget that where they grew up is not necessarily a bad place, but I think you just have to kind of learn yourself,
for sure,
over time.
For sure. I grew up here. I grew up in Milton. What's now Milton? It used to be Alpharetta.
Oh my gosh, like the bougiest horse farm area of all of Georgia.
Yep. So until I was about 7 or 8, I lived in Mableton.
Okay. Yeah.
In a little, it wasn't really a ranch. It kind of had a loft, but little 2 or 3 bed in Mableton. And then in, what was this, 2001, we moved to Alpharetta, what is now Milton.
Okay.
And it was like, my dad was always in real estate.
Oh, right?
Yeah. So he kind of saw, like, he kind of knew, like, oh, this is going to be the place to be.
Yep.
And sure enough, now I'm like, dang, I wish I could go back and pay what we paid for that house now. Like,
I know, right?
Amazing. But yeah, I mean, so I grew up there, and all I wanted to do when I was a kid, I'm like, I want to get out of Georgia.
Yep.
I felt like I was in a bubble, which I kind of, Alpharetta is like kind of that way. I was like, I want to go to LA. I want to live in LA.
Totally.
And then now I'm like you said, you couldn't pay me enough. I love Georgia. I really do. And I want land. I want to be out of the city.
It's so funny. And there's so many people like us, I think, that felt that same way. Like I would say most of the people that I went to school with, surprise, I graduated with 43 people. So it was not a very big school. And we all knew each other, and like first, middle, and last name. Wow. We all knew each other's parents. Like it was a very, very small, isolated world. So that was part of what I wanted to go and see more and do more. And I felt like the world was a bigger place, and I'm glad I did. But seeing that, like I've lived in many, many places around the world, and honestly, Georgia is the best. There's pretty spots around, our country and in other countries, but truly from a day-to-day living really can't beat it. You know,
Yeah.
prices are still relatively low. You know, it's just a temperate climate, like we were saying, and you can kind of get anywhere in
Yeah.
a very short period of time. Plus the airport. I mean, we have an international hub. I don't know what we would do without that, really, because like
Yeah.
anytime you want to go anywhere, everything comes out of Atlanta.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, totally.
get those Delta Sky Miles.
Yeah, I really agree. Like I don't know. I don't know where else I would live. And I think the internet honestly has a big part to play in that sort of feeling too.
Yeah.
Because now like you can be connected with people elsewhere. You can see other parts of the
Totally.
world, and you don't actually have to physically go there. And it's so everything's in HD now.
I know.
4K.
Like, how did we ever have relationships whenever we were younger with like anyone outside of like your general area, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and now people can just like hop on Skype and or whatever FaceTime,
Yeah.
you know? And I feel like I sound so old.
Even
like I'm
Skype is like out now.
I know. I feel like I'm so
Which is
old.
crazy.
I don't know. I guess I kind of detached from all that. You
Yeah.
know what? I will say, although it was a really bad thing, I think it made a lot of people realize a lot of things about their lives. And I feel I hate right now that we're going through what we're going through with the interest rate situation, because, and I do think that will change soon, but I do really appreciate that everyone kind of took a moment to like look inward and say,
Yeah.
am I happy where I'm living, or is this just a house, you know? And I think that was really cool to see people kind of come to realize that a house doesn't just have to be a house. It can be so much more, you know, it can be
Yeah.
land. It can be, you know, people got back to their roots. I mean, you know, I started wearing cowboy boots again, like, you
Yeah.
know, and hanging out outside and doing all of my stuff that I used to do when I was young. And, you know, and I just see so many people, you know, just glued to their phones all the time. And I'm one of them, you
Yeah.
know, but I try to detach from it. It's like it's a careful balancing act of not being too involved in social and the internet and our phones and
Yep.
all that. And then also not neglecting work and clients and people and friends and everything by not being that way. It's just,
I say it all the time. It's a necessary evil.
yeah.
You know, like we have to have it, we have to use it, and it does do some good. But being able to have some discipline to mitigate your use of it,
Yeah.
and realize like, oh, what have I been doing for the past 10 minutes? I just
Or
got
like
sucked
an
into
hour,
it.
you know?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's
10 minutes is kind of
it's crazy. Like I think about the you know, our phones. So like, you know, if I don't get a response or something from somebody, like I can well, I mean, my wife, like if she's dealing with the dogs and stuff, I want to check and make sure that she got back safely or whatever, I can pop it up, and then she'll use it on me. She sees my location. She's like, why have you been like hanging out at Walmart? Are you in the camping section or something? Like, so you've been there for over an hour and you just
Yeah.
said you were running by to grab something.
Yeah.
It's like, what did we do? You know, I remember, gosh, I'm just going to be talking about old times now. I remember as a kid, it was like you go out and play. And when the streetlights came on, truly, and
That's when you knew.
I know I'm not like that old, but when the streetlights came on, that's when we knew, like, okay, you've got another 30 minutes or
Yep.
so, and you need to be home. And
Yep.
like all the kids would kind of disperse and go their separate ways, and we'd
Yep.
go back to our houses. And you know, I don't know. I do hope for you know, different strokes for different folks, but I do hope that, you know, our next generation coming up gets to experience a little bit of that, about being outside and
Totally.
you know, enjoying the world that we have, you know, while it's still here.
Yeah, that's one of, you know, my best memories were being outside
Yeah.
building forts,
Building forts, man.
digging holes for no reason.
Yep.
Like, you know, dirt bikes.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and that's exactly like what I remember, you know, not only the streetlights, because honestly, I was so far back in the woods that I couldn't see the streetlights.
Yeah.
So I would just listen to just
Yeah.
like way far in the distance.
Yep.
My mom's calling for me, you know, like acres and acres. But and the thing is, like, we didn't have acres. We had like, there was like this 40-acre just plot of land
Yeah.
behind our house that was just woods.
Yeah.
Don't know who owned it. Don't know where, you know, whatever. I think now somebody cleared it and like built a big house back there
yeah.
or something. But there was like trails. There was like a waterfall back there. There was like a stream, and that's all I used to do.
Isn't it funny too that like as kids we didn't have cell phones, so that like there was no, our parents just assumed that we were fine.
Yep.
Unless like sirens and lights were coming down the driveway or something.
Yeah.
Like no one really, like you know, and if you went somewhere, you didn't have a phone to text them, hey, I'm on my way or I'm about to be here. Just as interesting in such a short period of time. Like really and truly in our lifetimes, we've seen things go from very simple to extremely complex.
Yeah.
Just such a short period. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, oh my gosh, my friends from high school and stuff will laugh because I was not this person back then. We were just talking the other day about things we did when we were kids that we would never do now. I would be in a creek, like catching crawfish with my hands. I would reach underneath rocks and things I would never do now as an adult. Like, what snakes are down there? Right. Or like, what am I going to get bit by?
Right.
We just didn't care.
No fear, because you also don't know you don't know what the potential dangers are.
That's so true.
I think it's kind of that too. It's like you don't know what you don't know yet.
Yeah.
When you're that young, and so you're just like, hey, whatever
happens. If I get hurt, we'll fix it. We'll figure it out.
Whatever. Yeah. It's not, I don't have to pay the medical bill. I'm 10.
Right. Yeah. Nothing a Band-Aid can't fix. If we have to go to the ER.
Now we're like thinking about our bank, and we're like, okay, hold on. Like, do I really want to take this risk right now?
Really? It's like, do I really want to pay for the ambulance to come, or can I tough it out?
Right. Should I really risk this or not?
God, adulting, man.
Dude, I stopped riding a motorcycle because my son was born, and I was like, this is not worth it.
Yeah.
Like, if I go out on my bike, the likelihood of my death is so much higher than if I was driving my car.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Riding a motorcycle, driving a car. So I just stopped. I'm like, it's not fair to my son.
Yeah.
For me to just go risking my life every time you know what I mean?
It's good that you have that mentality. I was in the midst of getting my racing license because ever since I was a kid, I always wanted to drive race cars, and I was in the process of doing that and like getting my certifications and stuff and going to like getting my track time. And then I got married, and my wife was like, I mean, and she's awesome. Like I would do anything for her, but it's so funny. She said, you're going to stop that, right? And I was like, but it's so fun. You're going to get yourself killed. And then you're going to leave me here with all this stuff to deal with.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, fine.
Fair.
But, she had to make me stop. I wasn't as good as you. I just willingly, decided.
I think it's just fear, It's just like, man, you realize, I mean, I think having a kid too is just like something clicks in you that I can't understand. And I don't know. And have you ever done autocross? So autocross,
no.
It's basically like a cone track.
Yeah.
And you race for times. You get 8 laps. It's like a bunch of people. You bring in they'll have like a Mercedes, BMW one. They'll have like a Porsche one.
Yeah.
So I do it with my car. Me and my buddies, we all have Tesla Model 3s.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so I've gone. I think it's been twice now. Once. I love it. It's so much fun.
I would love to do that.
It's so fun because there's really no risk. They set it up in a parking lot.
Yeah.
It's all, you walk the track in the morning. It's like a full day thing.
Oh, that's cool.
But it's so fun. I highly recommend it.
I've got to get back up to Atlanta Motorsports Park because I used to go up there pretty often.
Yeah.
But and it's up like in my neck of the woods.
Yeah.
And we would do the kart racing, which is actually they don't look like they're going that fast. They're going like almost 60 miles an hour. And when you're like almost 6 feet tall and in a tiny,
this close to the ground,
literally you're like your butt is like skidding almost on the pavement, and you're going that fast. I mean, those things are awesome. So I need to look into the
it's
autocross
super
thing.
fun. It's safe too. I mean, it's where, again, parking lot. The worst thing you're going to hit is a cone, probably. What's funny is the first time I ever did it was in my other car. I have the performance Model 3 now, but I had the long range version before. So I had all season tires on. And so it was just like every corner was just squealing. And everybody, like, when I got back, they're like, all season tires, huh? Like, you're not.
That's so funny.
I could hear them from the,
We were joking. I just bought a truck like a couple days ago, and like a 1976 Ford, and the guy popped the hood. I'm like, I love cars more than the next person, but I don't know anything about them. Like, I'm not going to even pretend. And same thing with lawnmowers and tractors and all that stuff. Like, these guys that know all that stuff, I totally admire them and probably should really learn more about it. But he popped the hood. He's like, I can pop the hood and show you the engine and everything. I don't know anything about it. And I was like, dude, me either. I know nothing about it. So I have actually been in that same situation where I've had people that are trying to like go through land and stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, my truck's gonna be fine. And I'm like, you don't have mud tires, like you're gonna get stuck. They're out there with all season tires on their trucks, and they get in this big mud pit and they have no way to get out. I actually have great videos of me with clients pulling their trucks out of like stuck in the mud pit and stuff. I mean, it's things you don't think about because you don't know, but I've just learned not to even try to pretend anymore. I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Just tell me what to do.
Yeah, dude, it was so funny, man. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, and I did okay too, even with the, all the traction settings were set to maximum because it's just a normal car.
Yeah.
And, all the horrible, like, basically those tires were like ice. Like, it was just, I was just sliding around everywhere, but no grip. But anyways, dude, we gotta get to real estate.
I know, yeah, we should talk about real estate, shouldn't we?
So you started doing real estate in, you said 2016?
Yeah, we started around the same time.
Okay, so you said you were working, you had your own agency.
So I my mom actually started Century 21 brokerages in the northern part of the state when before I was even born, actually. And so she was with them for a long time. Market went down. Like, her and my dad both switched to another brokerage, and then they ended up at KW.
Yeah.
And that's where I parked my license to begin with. And I was with them the entire time. I'm still with them now, but surprise, we're opening our own brokerage. So that's happening next month. No one knows that yet.
Oh, wow. Well, this will be out in 2 weeks, so
great. Yeah, perfect timing. So we, I had my license there for the entire time, and it was great. It was, I had never really been anywhere else, and I interviewed at a lot of different places, and I've seen what a lot of other people are doing, and I think the last couple of years has really made me introspective too on what is important to me in my business and what is important to my clients, and I don't think I'll ever be. I don't really ever want to be a giant, huge, selling 1,000 houses a year, that kind of person. It's far more specialized for me, and
quality over quantity.
Totally. Yeah. And I looked at the models too for like big teams and everything, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, everybody's got a different way of doing business. But it was more, real estate is a business. It is how we take care of ourselves. And, we have to have that conversation with clients a lot of times too, because, it doesn't seem, if it seems like we're not doing much, then you're probably doing a pretty good job, because as long as you're getting everybody through to the finish line and the hiccups are protected from the client and they don't know all of the crazy stuff that's going on, you're just coming to them with solutions rather than bringing the problem to them and letting them know.
Yep.
Then hopefully we're doing we're doing our jobs well. But I was with them for a long time, and and now I've just realized that it's time for me to break out and do our own thing. So we're shifting gears, and we're going to be doing our own brokerage, but also we have decided now that we're going to start building as well. So that's going to be a new thing. And that was prompted from a number of things.
Yeah.
But this is one of the things I was going to talk to you about before. I don't know if we're allowed,
Go for it.
So it's interesting. I'm a data guy, and I love, this is like a weird juxtaposition of how I look. And that also changed during, but it's like my whole life changed during. So I had a lot of time to think. I
think a lot of people's lives changed over. Too, Anyways, we can get back into that.
I had a lot of time to think about, what's important, and I think there's a misconception too in real estate. I'm going to get off on a million tangents right now, because this is like a topic I think about a lot. There's a misconception in real estate that like you get your license and then like you're making money immediately, and no one really knows how much work it actually takes to get to a level where you're really successful. And it took so many years. Like we were just talking about, when did you start? When did I start? Like 2016, it seems like yesterday, but it's been years. Mm-hmm. And like, there is no off time. There is no off day. Like, I had to let clients know I was going to be here, that like they weren't going to be able to talk to me for a while.
Right.
I mean, it's nights and weekends. And I had a great guy that I think is a fantastic agent, and he does a ton of business. And I have a lot of respect for the way that he works and the way he carries himself and his business. We have two totally separate markets and everything. So I've called him, a few times to talk about things. And I said, what do you attribute your success to? And he said, I don't think anyone will ever tell you this, but it truly is hard work, just unbelievable amounts of hard work and sacrifice.
Yeah.
You sacrifice time with family. You don't get to go to friends' weddings. You don't get to go on vacations like you'd want to. When your friends are out doing stuff, you can't necessarily be out. Like, you sacrifice time, for yourself and for your wife or your husband or your kids or whatever. You sacrifice a lot of that because your life really, it really depends on your clients' lives and like making sure that their lives are as seamless as possible. And it is a stressful process and all that. So getting back to the reason why things changed for me, COVID happened and I started realizing I've spent all of this time and effort building a business that is truly quality over quantity. It is about the people, and it is about finding a particular house and negotiating a particular deal for these people. And while I may not sell 1,000 houses a year, and I may not make the same money as someone who sells 1,000 houses a year, I have these clients, these repeat and referral clients that I have developed relationships with, and some strictly professional, and some like we're all friends now, and like we go out and we'll have them over for dinner and that kind of thing. But we know their lives, and we know the reasons why they're making the moves that they're making, and and so we've spent a lot more time really diving into whatever their needs are, so that if something comes up that's really good, then we can shoot it to them immediately. And I'm not sure if I got all the way through with what I was thinking, because I went off on 10 tangents. But
I think that's great. I think developing the relationships and focusing so much on the client that you're working with. Yeah, I think that's awesome. Rather than, again, quality over quantity. Yeah. And like, these are relationships that are going to last. These are people who are going to be like, oh, you need a real estate agent? You need somebody to help you? I know the guy.
I start like my listing presentations with that. I'm like, you were probably a referral, and I'm going to tell you the same thing that I told the people that referred you. By the time we're done, I want this process to be so great that you go and tell 5 people that you cannot use anyone but him. You have to use this guy. I'm just telling you, I don't know what is different, but everything is different. So you got to call this guy. And if I've always started off with that and just said, like, that's the expectation level that I want to set for you guys. Yeah. And you're hiring me to be honest with you, not tell you what you want to hear. Yeah. And a lot of times people don't like the honest truth. And I've always said, if it's not the right listing for me, or it's not the right buyer for me, then I'll be honest with you. And if you really want to get it sold, or you really want to buy, XYZ, I'll be honest with you about what you need to do, versus just telling you because I want to get the listing and I want it to sit there and have to call every 5 minutes and tell you that nothing is happening, and then you're mad, and then I'm upset and I'm stressed out.
Which I think so many people do. They just sort of say what they think needs to be said to get the listing, and then it just ends up expiring. And
we've had a lot of, and this is a COVID related thing too. I think a lot of people, I think that's what I was getting at before, really. I think a lot of people jumped into the business because this will tie it together, because it seems like it's fast, easy, quick money, and there's a low threshold to get licensed, and it truly is a professional business. It is your greatest investment, and it is an extremely complex process that everyone wants to make simple, and there's no way to make it simple. Like you end up the day before a closing, or you're going to your walkthrough, and like all the shower glass in the master has just completely shattered and it's all over the floor. Yeah. That has happened to me. What do? Like you can't, and it takes a person to understand what the needs and wants of your client and the needs and wants of the other client. If you have the buyer, what is the seller gonna say whenever they realize all their shower glass is like shattered after they left the house the night before, thinking they were going to closing? Yeah. It's a hard business, and you run into things that you wouldn't necessarily think. And so I think everyone kind of thought, this is a great way to make money, and they jump into it. So we had so many people get licensed in such a short period of time that everybody knows an agent. Everybody, or like you've got
a family member.
Yeah, like I do this as my day job, but I also do real estate on the side, and I respect that everybody has the right and opportunity to do whatever they want to do. Being full time, truly, it's hard, and it takes a long time to get built up, but it really is a full-time job. Like you can't really advocate for your clients on a professional level, at the same as like what a doctor would do. You don't want a part-time doctor. Yeah. Right. I mean? Yeah. I work on cars, and I also fix people.
He's like, my side hustle is I'm a doctor.
No, totally. So, I try to have those conversations with people, but we have had a lot of people come in the business recently, and I think we'll see a little bit of that shake out, the people who've been around for a long time. But hard work determination, a lot of sacrifice, and people don't see that. They see the trailer, they don't see the feature film.
Yeah.
You know, they see like, oh yeah, you know, you've sold a lot and you're really successful and whatever, and not even just about me. Like I've said that about other people, but you don't know the struggles that they go through, and you don't know like the sleepless nights on the biggest deal of their life, and
Right.
you know, they think it's going to fall apart the night before, and you know, like I've lost half my hair in the last 2 years because I'm stressed.
Same.
And
Yeah.
you know, it's one of those things that you don't see. You just see like, you know, new listing, closed, sold,
Yep.
happy people, and yeah, it's a tough business. It really is.
I think this is applicable not just to real estate, but really anything like that. Anytime you see somebody who's, you know, done something that whatever you consider is successful, because that's
Yeah.
different for everybody.
Yeah.
But if you see somebody like that, you see, you know, the stuff on social media, you see what they talk about and the successes and whatever it is. But again, you don't see the struggles. You don't
Yeah.
see the, you know, sleepless nights, the hair loss, the whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
because of all of that stuff that it took to do that.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
mean, like you said, hard work and sacrifice. That sacrifice is like, you got to go through it. You got to go through it. And at some point you won't have to do that.
Exactly.
But because you did do it before.
yeah,
you have to.
and it ebbs and flows too. I mean, truly, my wife has been like the biggest supporter of me and the biggest like rock for me to stay going and keep moving forward. And I mean, I can't tell you just the times where I'm freaking out because, you know, and I never want anybody to know that. I think we don't talk about those things really nearly enough, that the business is so stressful. And there's a few where it's just like, oh yeah, this is the perfect house for us. It's the first one. Like, let's just close it tomorrow.
It's like House Hunters and
Yeah.
all of those TV shows. Let's like make it look like, oh,
Those,
this is the one. Okay.
They do happen from time to time,
Sure.
but it's very rare.
Yeah.
And like the ones that really matter, and you know, the ones that there's a lot of things hinging on, you know, they're the sleepless nights, the stress, the freaking out, and then it's so psychological, you know, truly understanding what people's motives and motivations are.
Yeah.
Like I remember when first started, that was a mess. I mean, no one knew what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. I remember talking about the first time I ever heard the word pandemic was in like January of 2020.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, they'll get that figured out in a week or two.
Same.
Like, you know, no big deal. And then Jordan's like, you got to stop by Costco and get toilet paper. And I was like, yeah, it's fine. We can run to the store anytime. I'm busy. Like I got stuff. And no, you need to go. And I didn't
Yeah.
go. And oh my God, that was a mistake.
So I had an office full of people then, right? So I had literally, there were 6 or 7 people other than me in my office. And here I am. I'm like, remember the map?
Yeah.
Like that map, the website
Yeah.
where it had the whole map with all the little red dots, and it'd be
Yeah.
like, okay, now there's 70 cases, and like I would just kept refreshing, right? And every
it
morning
just
I would
kept
refresh,
growing.
and I would be like, okay, like, what am I gonna have to send people home?
Yeah. When do we need to
Like,
shut down?
So I just started like, you know, preparing everything. It's like, all right, editors, we're gonna send the IMAX home with you. You're gonna have to work from home, like all of this stuff. I'm like, when do I make the call? And at some point, it was like, one of the editors came up. It's like, I think we're gonna have to make this call. I think we're gonna have to go home. I'm
Yeah.
like, if that's what you guys want, let's do it. You know, let's do it. So man, it was crazy.
It was.
because you didn't know. At first, it was like, okay, like it's kind of like what was Ebola or something? Like was the
Yeah,
one like
yeah.
a long time ago, but it was like, you know, it was bad, but it wasn't. You know, I'm
Didn't
not
shut
gonna
the
say
world
this-
down.
It's the C word. It's gonna get YouTube deranked or whatever, right? So we'll say the virus. So until that happened, we had really nothing to compare it to in our lifetimes,
Yeah.
really. So it was like kind of unexpected.
I've never seen anything. I mean, I you know, even looking back at history, like there's just the global impact. I mean, the ripple effect. I
Yeah.
mean, it was, we had people that were moving in from, this was even really before like the Great Migration of people from across the country.
Yeah.
We had people moving from like Michigan and like parts of the north, and
Yeah.
and they had come down. I had shown them places, and you know, they were under contract going back up there to put their house on the market, and this was, you know, an untypical thing. And I mean, this kind of points to a lot of the topics we talked about today, that we were in such a sticky situation. They were cash buyers. They were selling their house, and you know, they had cash to buy the house, but they wanted to sell theirs. They didn't want a house in Michigan and one here. And I
Yeah.
remember talking to them, and I didn't hear from them for like a week, and I was like, well, that's kind of weird. I needed to touch base. And then sure enough, like right then my phone rang, and the husband was like, yeah, we're not going to close. We're just not going to close on it. And I was like, we don't have a choice. We have to close on it. You know, we're like,
Oh,
there's some
man.
laws and stuff, and like there's a few things that you're going to want to reconsider what's going on. Like let's tackle this from a place of like understanding the facts, just like not we're fearful of moving, like let's come from a place of fact and not fear. So we went through the fears and we talked through everything, and they were adamant they were not going to close. So it was up to me to figure out how are we going to do this, because I have a family with a kid on the way and two small kids that live with them. They've packed their entire home. They're getting ready to move in a week, and I have these people that are supposed to be coming in and buying the house. Their house isn't under contract yet. What are we going to do? So it literally came down to getting them a loan in 7 days. They got a 30-year mortgage. They kept the house up there. They rented the house down here back to the people that were buying it so that she could finish her pregnancy and stay there, because they were buying furniture and stuff too. It was a mess, but it worked out perfectly. And these people, and that was during shutdown. Like no one was able to do anything.
Wow.
So we were able to finally close it. Everybody stayed where they were. They owned the house at that point, so that it didn't get away. And now they look back and they're like, thank you so much for pushing us, because this was 2020, spring of 2020. Prices were great then.
Ooh,
I was like, you need to buy this house. There's nothing we can do to undo it. So we're going to have to figure out a way for you to buy the house.
Good move.
It worked out so well for them. And now, I mean, as soon as the lockdown opened up there, they sold their house in like a day. It was done. And they were able to move down here, and they're comfortable. They retired here. So it was one of those tricky situations, but I would venture to say there's no AI that can figure that out. and
bringing it full circle here.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's also, it just took so much time, effort, and energy, and like phone calls and just structuring that one deal just to get those people here. And it wasn't about the money necessarily.
Yeah.
It was about like, these people's lives are going to be affected dramatically if they don't sell this one and they don't sell that one, and those people don't move, and they were counting on this money. They're building a house. I mean, it just touched so many different people's lives. And I think that I call myself a real estate agent, but I really feel like I'm more of a problem solver. And
Totally.
I look at things in that way. Like there's nothing better for me than solving a complex problem. And it's psychological, it's financial, it's, real estate. Sometimes it's law, sometimes you're a therapist. But those are the kind of reasons why I feel like, too much growth, at least for me, would be, it would be doing a disservice to the people that I care about in my work. So
It's hard to like replicate yourself that many times.
And the team aspect, they will tell you that you can, and I don't doubt that you can.
Yeah.
But I've tried training people, and I've tried, it's just not for me. It's not my.
Well, because it's not like you're training them like a skill or something to just like, it's not like you're like a physical, like here's how you do this.
Yeah.
It's like it's so nuanced. Like there's so much emotion in it.
Yeah.
There's so many, like you said, the problem solving. There's so many unknown unknowns.
And reading people, I mean, it's sad. I mean, and I think this is attributable to the fact that we have a lot of people that have come into the business new, and I was blessed to grow up around it. So, even though I was newer in getting licensed, I saw a lot of this stuff happen, and I watched my parents go through it. But it was very, very interesting to see like how clients don't trust a lot of times, especially if you don't know them or they don't know you. It's a referral. Like you haven't even met them. They're overseas or they're, in another state, and they just think like real estate agents are out for money. And like, I'm sure that's true. There's plenty of people that like, that's all they care about is I want to get the paycheck and move on to the next one.
Right.
But, everybody's got a different business model. And for me, it's people. And I think that was the most interesting thing for me in getting in the business, like the stuff they don't teach you in the courses, that you really have to learn how to read people and figure out like if they're lying to you, why are they lying to you? Why are they not telling you exactly how they feel about whatever the situation is? Is it really money? Is it really they're scared? Are they, why are they scared?
Yeah.
Are they in a fight with their significant other that day? And like, that's
Right.
what's causing the problem. And, we have to deal with a lot of those things. It really just can't be, it can't be replicated. And you can call me old school, but I feel like taking care of those people in that way, like really and truly for the new people who are just starting out, taking care of your people, I call them my people, your clients, taking care of your people, that's the way to success. You build a repeat and referral business. It's a tried and true method, and you can build a team and get a ton of internet leads and all that kind of stuff. and that works for some people, and you can build relationships that way. But really and truly, it's not even so much about having to be in one particular area or like working in neighborhood. I know a lot of people work in area or neighborhood. It's more about like really taking care of the people that you have and making sure that you do a great job of protecting them and advising them as best you can.
That kind of intentionality is really admirable, by the way. I like that.
Thank you. I can give my parents good credit for that. It's just take care. There's no paycheck that's worth your reputation ever. And I've had a lot of bad things done to me in my career, even very, very recently. And it's a ruthless business and very cutthroat. And you don't see that when you're getting started to begin with. But it is what it is. People have their own intentions and their own stuff. And, like I said, there's no paycheck that's worth your reputation because you can't get that back. You can make more money and you'll probably lose more money, but you can't get your reputation back once you do something, that's
I like that
great.
line. I like that line a lot. So I know like we've talked a little bit about the stresses, kind of the again, going back to our pros and cons list, we've talked a lot about the cons, I think a little bit. But I know that
what does that say about me?
but I think it needs to be talked about too. Yeah. Like you said, like people don't often talk about that enough. And then
they see everyone rolling in Range Rovers and like cashing checks and going on vacations and stuff. And like, there's a lot more to it than just that.
There's a lot that went behind that.
And you've probably seen, I haven't been active on social in quite a while because I've been resetting and kind of trying to figure out, it's been a tough couple of years of just work, and we've been resetting, figuring out like our own stuff, like houses and where we're moving and living and just getting back to like level ground. Jordan says all the time, like you can't have peaks without valleys. Yeah. And like the peaks are awesome, when you're closing really huge deals and everybody's happy and all that, and then the valleys when you're like worried it's all falling apart and you don't know where things are going to go because people are getting nervous, and like interest rates has done that to my business. I mean, a lot of my clients were cash buyers, but I mean, even those people are like, why am I going to put money into this right now when I could keep my money in this, like
totally.
It's just changed. So you have those peaks and valleys. And I do think that that's something that needs to be addressed in our greater market because it's not just what you see on TV. Yeah. There are hard days. Many of them are hard days.
For sure you love real estate. Otherwise you wouldn't still be doing it.
Totally.
So why is it that you love, what is it about real estate that grips you? What is it that you love?
It used to be the thrill. I was really excited by the thrill of finding the right place for people. Cause when you first start out, typically you're working with more buyers than sellers. You're looking for houses for people that or friends, like whoever your market is, you're going after those people and you're usually helping them find a house. So it was the thrill of like finding the right one, negotiating a great deal. Your people are happy, you're happy, everybody's great, and like they're getting their first home or their second home or whatever. And then now I really think it's more like my world has changed a little bit. It's not so much about the thrill of each deal anymore. It's more about I guess it's the problem solving. It's figuring out what is this person's goal with, like, they have a really ultra high net worth. Like, what are they doing with their real estate portfolio? What things do they need in their portfolio? Figuring out for me the new growth potential in new markets and new areas, especially, that's a big reason why we moved up north. I remember when we lived literally around the corner from here. Like my first house I bought, it was like down the street. Yeah. And, man, Alpharetta just blew up, and we're like, we can't stay here anymore. I love it. I love Avalon. I love the area and all that. But we're like, we gotta go, and Jordan's like, I need space. I need a yard. I don't care where that yard is, but I need a yard. We've got 3 dogs. We got to have a yard. Yep. So we moved to Cummingen. I can't tell you how many of my friends asked if they needed a passport to come visit us because we were so far north. They were like, do we need to get a passport to come visit you up in Canada? Like how long does it take to get there from Buckhead? Right. And
but it's really not that far.
Well, now Cumming is Alpharetta. I mean, it really and truly,
it just keeps creeping up.
So we left there this past year and moved to Dahlonega, and the thing that excites me is seeing what's coming, and I truly can see what is coming in the next 5 to 10 years, and helping people that I work with invest, and sometimes it's partnerships too, and sometimes it's just like advising and helping them find the right properties to buy. But now it is sometimes finding that good deal and the thrill of that, but it's more so like getting a core group of people that I know really trust me, and like my big client base and I've got some now that are like, if you like it, just put an offer on it. I don't even need to see it. You don't even need to tell me. Just go ahead and like put the offer together, send it to me to sign. And the reason for that is because they know that I'm so data oriented, and I like the understanding of what's coming next versus just like trying to go after like this person needs this house and I'm going to sell that, or like I want to get this listing, I'm going to, sell that and then move on to the next one. It's really figuring out like a 5-year plan.
Yeah.
I used to get beat up for that when I was a kid, because like everybody was like, you're 5 and you want to be 21. You're already picking out like what cars and like where you're going to like go out for your birthday. And, but now that's what gets me excited every day, is seeing what's coming and where it's coming and why. And I think the reason why we've seen such strong numbers in Georgia comparatively to other states that were big in the pandemic boom is because we still have, like what we were talking about before, this really vast infrastructure here. And like there's manufacturing, there's tech jobs, there's a huge multitude of industries that have available jobs here. Cost of living's relatively low.
Rivian is building a huge EV plant in where is that? Is that Macon area, like Warner Robins ish?
Yeah, and I forget how many jobs they're bringing there and like the total investment, but it's crazy. It's major. So it's clear that people are bringing those things here, and I think that we won't see nearly the effect that a lot of the places will see. And I keep hearing media and clients, because it trickles down. Well, what happens if, I'm going to wait until like prices come down 20% or something? And I'm like,
everybody's going to be buying then. Like,
and here's the funny thing. Look at the numbers as they were in 2019 and 2020, 2018 to 2020, right? You look at where prices were then, and you look at where prices are now. If you made 100% gain and it comes down by 20%, I know everyone wants to say the sky is falling, but you still made 80%.
Right.
So like, what are we really looking at?
Zoom out a little bit. Yeah.
If you look at it on a macro level, and I was telling you this before, like I really like understanding the data because it gives you a point of jumping off. And I think a lot of people in our business, it is very transactional, and it's not necessarily from a macro perspective of like, what's the market doing and why are people intrinsically going to one area versus another. And I found that part of it so fascinating, and no one was really looking at it. So I started looking at the data of home starts. I'm like, why are we in such a, like, it feels like we're in a crisis. I feel like I'm in a crisis. I have nothing to sell, like anything I put on the market, we sell it immediately because like there's nothing to buy. So then and especially during times when there really wasn't anything to buy, even with rates where they are, I've had so many multiple offer situations where like we're trying to get a house and there's 60 other people trying to get it too, still to this day. With rates where they are. So I'm like, why is that happening? Because I don't have a good answer for people when they're telling me, why is my offer not getting accepted? And I started looking at it from history, not necessarily what's going on right now, but what's been happening. And about 6 or 7 years ago, I call these like I told you so moments. And I'm like, I'm going to tell you something, and when this happens in 6 or 7 years, I'm going to tell you, I told you that was going to happen. So this will be one of those moments. I was saying that it's twofold. There's not enough houses, and there's a reason for that. And the other thing is there's not enough people learning how to do the trade work that, I don't know if it was the same for you, but it was definitely this way for me. Like, where are you going to go to college? What are you going to major in? It was like, everyone wants you to be in business or in I don't know, whatever thing like your family does or whatever thing you're interested in. And I think that's great, but it's very hard to know exactly what you want to do when you're 17 or 18. So we as a country have not been really pushing people to learn those skilled trades. They're kind of like passed down like grandparents, parents, kids. And, we lost a lot of the labor force when the market went down in 09 and 10. So we've kind of had this 10-year period where prices were very low. Not a lot of houses were being built. And I was like, That's got to have something to do with it. So I started looking into it. There are so few tradespeople in the country now that are learning or teaching others. And this is like not just Georgia, this is everywhere. There's very, very little emphasis from our schools on going to learn to do those things. And mark my words, those people that know how to do something with their hands, building, I mean, whatever it is, if it has anything to do with construction, like the economy thrives on the real estate industry, truly. Those people are going to be the highest paid people in our country in 10 years because I mean, AI can't do that. I mean, they may be able to print a house, like do a 3D printed house, but truly learning how to build is a skill that is kind of dying. And I was like, all right, so we've got those sorts of things happening and we don't have as many people. That's why like the cost of hiring anybody to like change your faucet costs 3 times as much as the faucet does.
Right.
Not a lot of people know how to do it. And the second thing is 1959 was when they started looking at data of home starts and housing prices and creating an index so that we could have something to look back to. Well, housing prices didn't really increase that much for 10 years. Over those decades, they didn't increase dramatically. But also, there were, I think, 150 million people in the country. So we were 150 roughly, don't quote me exactly on this, but 150-ish million people in like the early 60s in the United States. Now, in last census we did, there's 360 million people.
Yep.
So we've basically doubled the number of people in the country, and home starts on average to keep up with growth and, maintain, order, I guess. And this is not including multifamily and commercial and all that. So just let that be known.
Right.
But to keep up with demand, we need between 1 million and 1,200,000 home starts per year. So 1,200,000. So I was like, well, what were we averaging when we came out of the building world? Because my dad was a developer. Like I knew that like people weren't building anymore for a long time.
Yeah.
We were averaging between like 400 and 700,000 home starts per year between, I think it was like 2011, 2012, up until like 2017, 2018. Only until recently have we been starting to top that 1 million home starts per year. Well, if you look at the numbers, that's a deficit of like 300 to 400, sometimes 500,000 homes we needed to be building per year.
Whoa.
That people need homes to move into. Well, there's the reason why we have this massive shortage. There's a whole two new generations of people coming in that are first-time home buyers. There's nothing for them to buy. The cost of building is super high now because not that many people know how to do it.
Yeah.
There's a very small, and not that many people, have decided to go into that after the crash. And then couple that with a pandemic, then you've got, really, really high prices of materials and goods.
Yeah.
Those small starter houses are now, significantly higher in price point. So you look at all those economic factors and you start to like draw the lines between each one. We can't build out of the crisis that we're in.
Yeah.
So interest rates at 7%, if interest rates went to 10%, people are still going to have somewhere to live.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of apartment building and that kind of stuff going on, but those prices are high too. So
like what you're saying, like people, if they're not going to buy, they're going to rent. And so now more and more people are going to want to rent. So then rent prices are going to go up.
I was talking to my investors about this too, that look back at all of the Airbnbs that were bought during the pandemic. And like interest rates were super low. Why not buy a second home? You can make money on it.
Right.
Then investors started, like some of them were selling their properties, but other investors that were coming into the market that weren't retiring, like you sell off your portfolio, retire, I'm out. Well, someone's buying those. So, I'd say, who knows? Let's say 50% of those were actual home buyers.
Yeah.
The other 50% are investors. They're turning around and renting those houses. So we have all of those houses not included in that need for new people buying. I mean, some homes, average life expectancy of a house is like 100 years or something, if it's maintained. I forget what they do for appraisals, but it's something like 50 to 100 years, somewhere in that range. Some are going to get torn down. Some are going to need to be torn down. Some are no longer usable. And, you've got mobile homes and like all different sorts of things. People have to live somewhere. So eventually those houses are no longer going to be needed or they're never going to be rented or renovated. So those go away. Well, then you've got to build new to replace those. And, those first time buyers or, move up buyers, the change in prices really was necessary over all those years where it was kind of low. We should have been increasing like 3 to 6% every year. That's your average for, increase in value. We saw really the need to be where we are now. We saw all of that catch up in like a 2-year process. So that's why prices are where they are. That's why there's nothing on the market. That's why people are still out buying like crazy. And truly, there's no way to build out of it. I mean, we'll see what happens with the interest rates and stuff. But I mean, unless we're building 2 million homes a year for the next 5 years, I don't think we'll ever catch up. So I would expect to see prices going up without stopping. Really, for the foreseeable future.
Low supply, can't keep up with demand. Price go up.
That's when we're going to start building because, I mean, there's a need,
Yeah. So for somebody young out there watching this, getting out of college, thinking about going into college, maybe go into a trade. There's probably a lot of money to be made.
Well, and we're looking. Everyone's been talking about the student loans. I mean, you come out. I have friends that went to NYU with me. And I mean, it was the most expensive school in the country. I don't know what they charge now, but I know people that were coming out with 6 figures, like really hefty 6-figure loans that, they're doing jobs that I'm sure are fantastic because it's a great school, but that debt load coming out, I mean, I know why it feels like it's impossible to buy a house because then you're adding another, multi 6-figure, bill to what you already owe.
Crazy.
The trade world, I mean, you jump right in, you learn, you apprentice. That's your 4-year degree really is like learning how to do something that will literally last you for a lifetime. And then if you teach 5 other people how to do it, you've built an ongoing business and source of revenue that is actually really necessary for our world survival. Everybody's got to have a place to live, and the better you are at it, the more people will pay you.
Now a slight deviation of that.
Back to water?
Not back to water.
I'm kidding.
But have you heard of Boxable?
No.
Boxable is basically it's prefab houses.
Oh yeah.
It's small houses, but they build them in panels, and then they can sort of Tetris them together.
Yes.
And you sort of build you pick out your build.
Yep.
2-bed, 3-bed, whatever it is. They ship them on shipping containers.
Yeah.
And they just go put it all together, and it's all made in a factory.
I think that's brilliant.
So I think there's something to that because I think they might be seeing what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And saying, labor going down.
Yeah.
Demand going up, population going up. Maybe that's where they're positioning themselves, companies like that. And again, who knows how sustainable that is?
I looked into not that particular company, but I looked into one of those prefab houses, and it made me think. I sold a house in Virginia Highlands that was a Sears house, so it was like you buy it in a catalog back in the day,
Wow.
And it was so cool. Sadly, they tore it down, and they built a giant McMansion, but it was cool because I knew about Sears houses, and I remember walking through that for the first time, and I was like, man, this thing's been here for a really, really long time.
Yeah.
And I started looking into prefab because I was like, that's a quick, easy way, even for rentals, like that's a quick and easy way to throw up a house.
Right.
And the ones in California are expensive. I don't know how much Boxable costs, but I was looking at like a 900 square foot or 1,000 square foot prefab, and they were still like almost $500,000 for the finished product,
not because
including
it was in California.
No, and not including the land too. So I mean, there's no good way to do it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like prices are going to keep going the way that they're going. But I saw something the other day that really caught my eye. It was like, how many times have you heard people say, like 10, 20 years ago, man, I wish I would have bought that house 10 or 20 years ago. Like, look at where the prices were. And, and then there's these other people saying, well, I'm going to wait and I'll wait and see. Mm-hmm. If you buy it now, 10 or 20 years from now, you can look back and be like, man, I'm so glad that I bought that 10 or 20 years ago, but we're just caught up in what we see right now, and I that's a hard thing to get out of. I find myself asking those questions daily, It's like, what do you do? Is it the right thing? But you look at history, the pricing index, while it goes down and it goes up, always, on average, it's going up.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, and I mean, people don't want to buy right now because of the interest rates, and they want to wait for interest rates to go down. But as soon as they do, everybody else is going to want to buy as well. So if you buy now at a higher interest rate, and then if they if
it's gonna happen eventually,
then refi.
Yeah, I'm worried about the spring because I mean I hope that interest rates go down, and I hope that we see things leveling out and everything, and they bring it back down to a reasonable level. Yeah. But truly, I've been thinking the same thing, that come January, if they do go down in December, then we could be faced with another style mania. All these people that have been in their houses for 2 years or 3 years or whatever, and they didn't see the dramatic price drop they thought they were going to see. And then rates come down, like, hey, I'm offloading, and then we have another mad rush with like lines out the door and bouncers in the front. Only 20 in at a time. Yeah, wait your turn.
Alex and we viewed like, I don't know, like 10, 15, I don't know how many houses we viewed, but we put offers on like
all of them,
4, because we bought almost exactly a year ago, and it was still when things were crazy. They weren't, interest rates weren't as high as they are now, but it was still like, and the only reason that they, chose us is because Alex was about to have a baby. We needed a house. So my dad was our agent, and he's like, hey, I got a very pregnant buyer here, so we just need to know. Yeah. And because she literally, we bought the house, had the baby the same month.
Man.
Yeah.
That's so crazy too. That's a good testament. It's a people business. I mean, sellers, they have the pick of whatever they want right now. So, in the majority. So it's definitely interesting to see too that like that's something that matters to them. That like goes in my bank of problem solving things. Like when you're dealing with those situations, how do you navigate
people
them?
People, I mean, a lot of the times they're like, oh, like that. I mean, that could be the deciding factor, because they're like, well, obviously this person needs it a lot more, you know, like, or whatever it is. Yeah. It's like, well, do I want to get a couple more grand, or do I, Right. I think that, and that's people. People are going to be necessary. I mean, again, foundation is the foundation. Yeah. AI will be the new, updated theater room or whatever in the house, new cabinets and everything. But it'll still have the same foundation of being people and sort of having the same, a lot of the same traditions, I think, in real estate. But dude, we went over an hour. Longest podcast so far.
Oh my God.
We could keep going.
I told you I can keep you talking all day long.
We'll have to have you back. Thank you so much for coming on, dude.
Yeah, man.
It was so much fun.
No, it was awesome. I appreciate you letting me go on and on and on for hours.
Totally. More than happy to. Where do you want people to go to find you or contact you?
PayneCoRealEstate.com is our website. Hopefully that doesn't change. It's not going to change.
If it does, just come back and do another plug.
Well, yeah, we'll do a URL push through, so you'll go to the new one.
Yeah.
You can find me there, and then Zach Payne Real Estate on Instagram.
Cool.
I promise I'll be more active.
Well, you'll have to post some clips from this episode.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Cool. Well, if you or anybody wants to be on the episode, or on the podcast rather, just DM us on Instagram, and we'll get you on the pod. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.